My name is Jake Evans, and I'm a spectacularly average guy. My life's ambition is to lie down whenever possible and to sit if lying down isn't an option. That was until a woman practically hogtied me and dragged me to City Hall. Her name is Catherine Sterling. She's worth billions, is so beautiful she looks computer-generated, and has the kind of raw physical power you'd expect from a Terminator fresh off the set. She gave me a contract and a sum of money I couldn't earn in 10 lifetimes to be her husband for 1 year. The job description had 3 key duties. Accompany her to an endless string of mind-numbingly boring galas. Help her handle a pack of bizarre relatives who were hell-bent on marrying her off for their own gain. When she felt the urge to physically assault someone but was constrained by her public image, I was to hand her a suitable blunt instrument. I thought I was signing up to be a trophy husband. It turned out to be a high-risk life insurance policy. My contract wife is fluent in 8 languages, can mentally calculate stock market trajectories, and can knock a man unconscious with a hardcover copy of Principles of Economics without batting an eye. Every wannabe social climber, every pretty boy gigolo, and every conniving corporate backstabber who tried to mess with me was eventually dealt with by her in the most straightforward and physically decisive manner. And me? I was the guy standing next to her, responsible for the sarcastic commentary and applause. Don't ask if I love her. Ask my professional integrity, which forbids it. After all, who falls in love with a boss who looks at you and occasionally considers using you as a barbell to work on her biceps? This is the story of how I, armed with little more than a sharp tongue, managed to survive and occasionally help clean up society's trash at the side of my combat-ready contract wife. My name is Jake Evans, and I was in the middle of eating a deluxe double bacon cheeseburger from a food cart with extra cheese. The weather was perfect, the burger was hot, and the guy at the cart had thrown in a free side of fries. As far as I was concerned, this was the peak of human existence. Then, a Rolls-Royce Cullinan, so black it reflected the sky, screeched to a halt in front of the cart like it was rushing to a funeral. The doors opened, and 2 guys in black suits and sunglasses stepped out, both wearing expressions that suggested I owed them $1 million. My stomach dropped. Seriously? My credit card was only $300 overdue last month. This seemed like a slightly excessive collection strategy. Mr. Evans, one of the suits said, his voice as cold and lifeless as if it had been stored in a freezer. I froze mid-bite, a French fry dangling from my lips. I nodded. Ms. Sterling requests your presence. Ms. Sterling? Which Ms. Sterling? The only one I know is Mrs. Sterling, who runs the laundromat downstairs, and her fabric softener deals are top-notch. I tried playing dumb. The suit ignored me. He and his partner simply lifted me off the plastic stool, one on each side. I was still holding my deluxe burger, almost spilling the special sauce. Hey guys, let's talk about this. Can I just finish my burger first? We can't let good food go to waste. No one was listening. Just like that, clutching my burger in one hand, I was escorted into the back of the Cullinan. The AC was blasting, making me shiver and threatening to turn my burger cold. In the center of the back seat sat a woman. She wore a perfectly tailored white pantsuit, her long hair tied back in a bun that revealed the pale, elegant curve of her neck. She wasn't wearing any makeup but her face. How do you even describe it? It looked like a 3D model from a high-end design program, utterly flawless. This was Catherine Sterling. I knew her from the cover of every business magazine. The number of zeros after her net worth took me a solid minute to count. She lifted her eyes, glanced at me, and then her gaze fell to the burger in my hand. Is it good? She asked. I blinked, then answered honestly. Yeah, he even threw in free fries today. She nodded, as if I were delivering a critical market analysis. Then, she picked up a folder from the seat beside her and handed it to me. Sign it. I took it. The cover read, in bold letters, marriage contract. I nearly threw my burger in her face. Ms. Sterling, is this some kind of modern-day shotgun wedding? My eyes started to twitch. I know I'm not bad-looking, but I didn't think I was worth this much effort. She didn't smile. Her expression was as still as a frozen lake. I require a husband. For 1 year. You meet my requirements. What requirements am I meeting? I was completely bewildered. The easily kidnapped requirement. No, she said coolly. You have a clean background, no parents, no messy social connections. You're not unattractive, and most importantly, you're poor. And you look like you can take a hit. Well, thanks for the vote of confidence. But what the hell was that last part? I looked down at the contract. Party A, Catherine Sterling. Party B, Jake Evans. Terms, Mr. Jake Evans shall act as the legal husband of Ms. Catherine Sterling for a period of 1 year. During the contract period, Mr. Evans must accompany Ms. Sterling to all necessary family and business functions and may not disclose the nature of their relationship. I flipped straight to the compensation page at the end. I closed my eyes, then opened them again. The zeros were still there. A 1, followed by 8 zeros. $100 million. I quietly placed my burger on the seat and took the pen from one of the suits. Ms. Sterling. I cleared my throat. I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm actually not tough at all. Very delicate, in fact. Catherine Sterling raised an eyebrow. Not enough. No. I gripped the pen tighter. What I mean is once I sign this, I'm all yours. So if you ever plan on hitting me, just give me a heads up so I can properly brace myself. Integrity? In the face of $100 million, integrity doesn't even register as a rounding error. I signed my name with a flourish. Catherine took the contract back, nodding with satisfaction. Excellent. She glanced at her watch. It's 9:15 a.m. City Hall opens at 9:30. We'll be right on time. It finally hit me. Wait, we're going right now. Why not? She retorted. Were you planning to save the contract as a Christmas decoration? The car sped off, pulling up to the courthouse steps moments later. We got out, took a photo, filled out the paperwork, and exchanged vows. Through the entire process, Catherine was completely expressionless, moving with the efficiency of someone opening a new high-yield savings account. I was in a daze the whole time. When I walked out with the freshly printed marriage certificate in my hand, I still felt like I was dreaming. So, the peak of my life wasn't a deluxe burger with extra fries. It was this piece of paper. Starting today, you'll live with me. This was Catherine Sterling's first official order. Right, boss? I mean, honey. The correction was instantaneous. She glanced at me, her eyes betraying nothing. Call me honey in public. In private, it's Ms. Sterling. Got it. I nodded like a bobblehead. Back in the Cullinan, the atmosphere was surreal. I was clutching my marriage certificate, feeling like I was in a bizarre dream. Catherine suddenly spoke. That burger you were eating, how much was it? $25. I answered truthfully. HM, she grunted, then said to the driver, go to the burger joint downtown. Buy out their business for the next decade. From now on, they cook exclusively for Mr. Evans. Driver. Yes, Ms. Sterling. Me. The $100 million contract, I could handle. Getting married on the spot, I could accept. But was she really going to strip me of the simple joy of a $25 burger? I looked at the stone-faced woman beside me and had only one thought. The next year was going to be even wilder than I imagined. Catherine Sterling's place wasn't a house. It was an estate. After passing through the gates, it took a full 5 minutes just to drive up to the main building. The lawns were manicured more neatly than my last haircut, and the fountain in the driveway shot water higher than my life goals. Me, Jake Evans, a guy who was stressing over a $300 credit card bill yesterday, was now living in a place like this. I felt like a husky that had been dropped into a wolf pack's den. Your room is on the second floor, third door on the left. The walk-in closet has clothes for you. Family dinner is at 7 tonight. Don't be late. With that, Catherine Sterling clicked away on her heels and disappeared into her study, as if she'd just gone downstairs to pick up a package from Amazon, not a husband from City Hall. I stood alone in the grand foyer, a space so vast I could hear my own echo, feeling like a computer virus that had accidentally wandered into a high-security server farm. For the family dinner that evening, I put on one of the suits from the closet, the price tag still attached. I tugged at the tie in the mirror, feeling like I was being fitted with a leash. In the dining room, a table long enough to host a ping-pong tournament was already filled with people. Every single one of them was dressed to the nines, and they all stared at me like I was the new monkey exhibit at the zoo, with a mixture of curiosity, contempt, and a disturbing hint of excitement. Catherine sat at the head of the table, emotionlessly slicing into a steak. I was seated next to her, a middle-aged woman, garishly dressed and caked in enough makeup to spackle a wall, spoke up, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Well, Catherine, is this the new boyfriend you found? He looks energetic. She scanned me from head to toe, her eyes lingering on my wrists and collar. So, young man, where do you work? This was Catherine's aunt, Carol Sterling. The assistant had briefed me on the way over. Her two main hobbies were one-upmanship and stirring up trouble. Catherine didn't look up. He's not my boyfriend, she said flatly. The table went quiet. A flicker of delight crossed Carol's face, thinking she'd found an opening. Not a boyfriend? Then what is he? Don't tell me. He's just some boy toy you picked up. A few stifled snickers echoed around the table. Catherine finally raised her head. She dabbed her lips with a napkin, then looked at Carol, her eyes perfectly calm. Aunt Carol, he's my husband. We got married today. Clang. Carol's knife and fork dropped on her plate. Every face around the table froze. I felt dozens of eyes on me like searchlights, trying to dissect me from the inside out. Am married? Carol's voice cracked. Catherine, how could you do something so huge without telling the family? And you found this. This. She wanted to say gold digger, but couldn't bring herself to be so direct, so she just sputtered. A sharp-looking man sitting nearby, Catherine's cousin Mark, pushed up his gold-rimmed glasses and tried to smooth things over with a smile. Catherine has always been one to make her own decisions. And, Jake, is it? We'd love to know what your parents do for a living. Not that the Sterlings are the kind of old-fashioned family to care about status, of course. It's just so we can all get to know each other, now that we're family. It sounded polite, but it was a clear probe into my background. Before I could answer, Catherine spoke for me. His parents are deceased. He has no connections, no assets, and is currently unemployed. Her voice wasn't loud, but in the silent dining room, every word hit like a thunderclap. Now, they didn't even bother to pretend. The looks of contempt morphed into a blatant, undisguised how the hell did this loser get so lucky. Carol, as if someone had stomped on her tail, completely lost it. Catherine, are you insane? You married this nobody? Do you want to make the Sterling family a laughingstock in every social circle? You know exactly what he's after, don't you? It's your money. I sat there, silently taking a sip of water. She was right. I was absolutely after the money. And Catherine had practically gift-wrapped it for me. Catherine looked at her, and a faint smile touched her lips. It wasn't a real smile. It was the look of a predator watching its prey step into a trap. Aunt Carol, she said slowly, I spend my own money to support my own husband. How exactly does that concern you? You're disgracing the family name. The family name? Catherine repeated the words, then set down her silverware and leaned forward slightly. Aunt Carol, if I recall correctly, last month your son, Kevin, lost $3 million gambling in Vegas. It was you who called me, begging me to cover his debt, wasn't it? Carol's face went white as a sheet. Mark's expression turned grim. And Catherine's gaze shifted to Mark, that green energy project you're managing. The last quarterly report looked a little too good. Should I have the accounting department bring up the raw data right now, so we can all review it together? Sweat started beading on Mark's forehead. The entire dining room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Catherine's eyes swept over every person at the table. The same people who had been sneering at me moments ago were now staring intently at the patterns on their dinner plates. He is my husband. I protect what's mine. Her voice was soft, but it carried an undeniable weight. Anyone who makes him unhappy is making me unhappy. And anyone who makes me unhappy. She paused, picked up a wine glass from the table, and gently squeezed it between two fingers. Crack! The crystal glass shattered into 1,000 tiny pieces in her hand. Without changing her expression, she dropped the shards into a wastebasket and wiped her fingers on her napkin. We'll face the consequences. Dead silence. I looked at her slender, porcelain-white fingers, then at the pile of broken glass, and discreetly scooted my chair a few inches away from her. This was terrifying. This woman was definitely trained in something lethal. Just then, Catherine turned to look at me, her expression back to its usual calm. Did they scare you? I looked at the table of relatives, all frozen in fear, then back at her, and broke into the most sincere smile of my life. Not all. You're the best, honey. That, honey, came straight from the heart. I was finally getting it. In this estate, the biggest rule was Catherine Sterling. And as her husband, all I had to do was cling to this powerful, intimidating, and slightly terrifying golden ticket, and I could do whatever I wanted. The tense dinner ended in a strangely harmonious atmosphere. As the relatives left, the way they looked at me had completely changed. Contempt had been replaced by awe, as if I were some brave warrior who dared to pull a tooth from a tiger's mouth. They had it all wrong. I wasn't the warrior. I was the tooth. My life as the Sterling Estates trophy husband officially began. My days fell into a simple rhythm. Eat, sleep, stroll through the gardens, and contemplate the meaning of life. One afternoon, I was lounging by the pool, sipping an iced lemonade and pondering whether to have French escargot or Japanese Kobe beef for lunch. A man in a flashy pink suit, his hair so gelled it could probably slice bread, stormed over with 2 bodyguards in tow. It was Chadwick Chad Preston, another name for my briefing packet. The son of a new money tycoon, he fancied himself a young titan of industry and had long considered Catherine Sterling his personal prize to be won. So, you the pretty boy? Chad stood over me, looking down his nose with an arrogance that was almost comical. I lazily tilted my head up. Hello, my name is Jake. Pretty boy isn't quite accurate. Ms. Sterling and I are legally married. We have a certificate and everything. I swirled the ice in my lemonade. Care for a drink? Freshly squeezed today. It's quite sweet. Chad's face turned an ugly shade of green. He'd probably expected me to either grovel in fear or fly into a rage. My calm indifference clearly threw him off. It kept man, and you dare to be arrogant with me? he sneered. Do you have any idea who I am? My father is the chairman of Preston Industries. With a snap of my fingers, I can make sure you never work in this city again. I nodded in understanding. Oh, your dad sounds impressive. Chad was speechless. It was like he'd thrown a punch and hit a pillow. All his bluster had nowhere to go. I'm here today to give you a chance, he said, taking a deep breath and adopting a condescending, savior-like posture. Leave Catherine, and I'll give you $5 million. Take the money, get out of this city, and never show your face again. I set down my glass, sat up straight, and put on a serious expression. Chad, thinking I was tempted, broke into a smug grin. I looked him dead in the eye and asked earnestly, $5 million? Are you trying to tip a waiter? Chad's smile froze. What did you say? What I mean is, I sighed, giving him a look one might reserve for a particularly slow child. Do you have some misunderstanding about Ms. Sterling's net worth? Or perhaps about my going rate? I held up one finger. 1 year on this contract is worth this much. Chad squinted. 10 million. I shook my head. 100 million. Chad's eyes nearly popped out of his head. Are you out of your damn mind? Why don't you just go rob a bank? I don't have to, I said, shrugging matter-of-factly. Ms. Sterling offered it to me. So, do you really think I'm going to give up a $100 million contract for your pathetic $5 million? Did your gym teacher teach you math? Chad's face went from green to a deep shade of purple. Even his bodyguards were struggling to hold back laughter. You're humiliating me. Chad trembled with rage. No, I'm just stating the facts. I leaned back in my lounge chair and put on my sunglasses. And another thing, stop calling me a kept man. It's an insult to my profession. Chad was stunned. You're telling me you're not? Of course not, I said, my voice full of righteous indignation. I'm a highly skilled professional. Could you get Catherine Sterling to pay $100 million to keep you? No, you couldn't. So please show a little respect for the top talent in my industry. Puffed. One of the bodyguards couldn't hold it in any longer and burst out laughing. Chad's face turned black. Get him. Throw him in the pool, he roared, completely losing his cool. The two bodyguards exchanged a look and started walking toward me. I didn't flinch. I was so relaxed I almost yawned. Just as they were about 6 feet away, a cold voice cut through the air from behind them. I dare you to touch him. Catherine had emerged from the main house at some point. She was dressed in black athletic wear, her hair in a ponytail, a light sheen of sweat on her face from a workout. But the aura she projected was more intimidating than both bodyguards combined. The moment Chad saw her, his demeanor changed instantly, his face contorting into a sycophantic smile. Catherine, darling, don't misunderstand. I was just having a little joke with your husband. Catherine walked over to my side, not even glancing at Chad. She looked down at me and asked, what did he say? I took off my sunglasses, my face a mask of wounded innocence. I pointed at Chad. He offered me $5 million to leave you. He called me a kept man and said I was disrespecting him. Then he was going to have his men throw your property into the swimming pool. I intentionally said, your property, not me. Catherine's eyes went ice cold. She turned toward Chad and started walking slowly in his direction. He backed away, a look of pure panic on his face. Catherine, listen, it was just a misunderstanding, I swear. She stopped right in front of him. Then, she did something no one expected. She reached out, grabbed Chad's tie with one hand and his belt with the other. To the soundtrack of Chad's terrified shriek, she flexed her arms and lifted him completely off the ground. Like she was lifting a barbell. Chad, all 190 pounds of him, looked like a helpless chick in her grasp. My property, Catherine's voice was quiet, but each word was a shard of ice, is not for trash like you to touch. And with that, she let go. Splash! Chad landed in the pool in a spectacularly graceless belly flop, sending a huge wave of water onto the deck. His two bodyguards were frozen in place, their jaws on the floor. Catherine dusted off her hands as if she'd just thrown out a bag of garbage. She walked to the edge of the pool and looked down at the sputtering, flailing Chad. $5 million, she scoffed. Chad, go home and tell your father I'm cutting off Preston Industries' raw material supply next quarter. When you can scrape together $5 billion, then you can come and talk to me. Chad, choking on pool water, turned pale with terror. $5 billion? That would gut his family's entire company. Catherine paid him no more attention and walked back toward me. She stopped and held out her hand. I stared blankly, not understanding what she wanted. What? Do I have to ask nicely? She said, raising an eyebrow. It clicked. I quickly handed her my iced lemonade. She took a long drink, then pushed the glass back into my hand. Next time trash like this shows up, have security throw them out. Don't waste my time. With that, she turned and walked back to the house. I watched her go, then glanced at Chad, still struggling in the pool, and his two petrified bodyguards. I silently took a sip of lemonade. Yep, still sweet. Being the preferred tool of a professional human garbage disposal specialist was, it turned out, pretty satisfying. Soon, it was time for the Sterling Corporation's annual gala. As Catherine Sterling's legal husband, my attendance was mandatory. She had a custom-tailored suit ready for me. It fit perfectly, and the fabric felt obscenely expensive. I looked at myself in the mirror, looking every bit the part, and barely recognized the man staring back. Remember the rules for tonight. Talk less, smile more, and stay by my side, Catherine instructed before we left. If someone talks to you, just nod, smile, and say, "My wife is always right." Got it. I gave her an okay sign. Just be a decorative mascot. I could do that. The gala was a glittering affair, all chandeliers and fake smiles. The moment Catherine arrived, she became the center of the universe. I trailed beside her, feeling less like a prince and more like the guy who carries the queen's train. Countless eyes were on me, a mix of curiosity, jealousy, and disdain. I ignored them all, kept a perfect smile plastered on my face, and chanted my mantra, 100 million, 100 million, 100 million. Halfway through the evening, Catherine was pulled aside by a few board members. Before she left, she shot me a look. I immediately nodded and smiled. My wife is always right. Her lip twitched, and she walked away. I found a quiet corner, grabbed a glass of champagne, and settled into People Watch. That's when a woman in a white evening gown approached me. She had an innocent, girl-next-door look, and she held her wine glass with a delicate grace. She stopped beside me, her voice soft and timid. "You must be Mr. Evans, right? I'm an intern in the marketing department. My name is Lily." I nodded and smiled. "Mr. Evans, you and Ms. Sterling seem so happy together." "We're all so envious," she said, her face a picture of pure sincerity. I continued to nod and smile. "Ms. Sterling works so hard all the time. It must be exhausting for her. She's just so strong-willed, always carrying everything on her own shoulders." Lily's eyes were filled with what looked like deep concern. I smirked internally. Here we go. Classic pick-me-girl playbook. I kept nodding, smiling, and took a sip of my champagne. Seeing that I was completely unresponsive, Lily got a little anxious. She leaned in closer, a cloud of cheap perfume hitting me in the face. "Mr. Evans, actually, I've always admired Ms. Sterling so much. I have a new marketing proposal here, and I was hoping you could help me pass it along to her. I'm just an intern, so if I get it to her directly, she probably won't even look at it." As she spoke, her chest accidentally brushed against my arm. I smoothly took a small step back, avoiding contact. "I'm sorry," I finally said, my smile unwavering, "but my wife told me not to speak with any unsavory women from the company." Lily's face instantly went pale. "Mr. Evans, you've misunderstood. I didn't mean anything by it." Her eyes welled up with tears, on the verge of a full-blown sob story. Great performance, but she had the wrong audience. Just as I was about to say something else, Lily's foot slipped, and she began to fall directly into my arms. The glass of red wine in her hand was aimed with perfect precision at my white dress shirt. It was a move straight out of a bad soap opera. But Jake Evans, a consummate professional, was not about to let that happen. The instant she started to fall, I moved with lightning speed, sidestepping a large step to my left. Simultaneously, I reached out and steadied a passing waiter's tray. As a result, Lily didn't fall into my arms. She fell flat on her face, hitting the floor with a loud thud. And the red wine didn't hit my shirt. It splashed all over her pristine white gown. The entire sequence was flawlessly executed. The crowd around us gasped. I returned the tray to the equally stunned waiter and gave him a polite thank you. Then I walked over to the fallen Lily, looking down at her with a concerned smile. "Oh my, Miss White, are you all right? You should really watch where you're going. Look, you've ruined such an expensive dress. What a shame." Lily was sprawled on the floor, a huge, ugly red stain blooming across her dress. Her makeup was streaked with tears, and she looked utterly pathetic. She glared up at me, her eyes filled with venom. You pushed me," she shrieked suddenly. Her ability to flip the script was truly impressive. The people around us started whispering. Just then, Catherine returned. She parted the crowd, walked to my side, glanced at the mess on the floor that was Lily, then looked at my spotless shirt. A flicker of understanding crossed her face. "What happened?" she asked me. I spread my hands, my face a mask of innocence. "I have no idea." This young lady said a few words to me. Then she tripped and spilled wine all over herself. Maybe she had too much to drink. I did not. Lily cried from the floor. "Ms. Sterling, it was him. He made a pass at me. When I resisted, he pushed me." Catherine ignored her completely and turned to her assistant. "Pull the security footage." Lily's sobs stopped mid-wail. The ballroom, for security reasons, was covered by 360-degree surveillance cameras. Less than 5 minutes later, the assistant was back with a tablet. The footage was projected onto a large screen for everyone to see. The video clearly showed Lily's accidental approach, her unintentional physical contact, her clumsy fall toward me, and my cold-hearted sidestep. Every detail was crystal clear. The truth was out. The room erupted in murmurs. Lily's face was no longer pale. It was a deathly gray. Catherine looked down at her, her eyes devoid of warmth. "A pass," she said coldly, "as if you're even worthy of his attention." Lily collapsed back onto the floor, speechless. "You're fired. Don't bother coming in tomorrow," Catherine said to Lily, then turned to her assistant. "And send out a memo. The Sterling Corporation will never, under any circumstances, hire anyone named Lily White. Also forward this security footage to the HR department of every major firm in the city." She was blackballing her for life. Upon hearing this, Lily's eyes rolled back in her head, and she fainted. After handling the situation, Catherine turned to me. I immediately stood at attention, a standard-issue smile on my face. "Honey, you're back." She looked me up and down, then reached out and straightened my tie. Her fingers were cool against my skin, raising goosebumps. "Quick reflexes," she said quietly. "You didn't embarrass me. Here to serve, my dear." I beamed. However, her tone shifted, her eyes turning dangerous. "You move pretty fast. Have you had training?" My heart skipped a beat. I quickly shook my head. No, just instinct. Purely a coincidence. Was she kidding? Could I tell her that I developed a sixth sense for trouble and a lightning-fast getaway from years of dodging debt collectors? That would completely shatter my can-take-a-hit persona. Catherine stared at me for a few seconds, but didn't press the issue. She took my arm and raised her glass to the crowd. "My apologies for the interruption. My husband, Jake, is a bit of an introvert and isn't used to these kinds of events. I trust you'll all make him feel welcome in the future." Her voice was calm, but everyone heard the message loud and clear. It was a declaration of ownership. I, Jake Evans, was under her protection. Feeling the soft touch of her arm on mine and seeing the surrounding looks of fear and envy, I had only one thought. This mascot gig was getting more and more technical. I used to think a woman like Catherine Sterling was forged from steel, immune to things like sickness. I was wrong. On a rainy morning, the butler woke me, telling me that Ms. Sterling had a fever. I rushed to her bedroom and found her lying in bed, her face flushed with an unhealthy red, her lips pale. It was the first time I'd ever seen her look so fragile. "Have you called a doctor?" I asked the butler. "Yes, the family physician is on his way," he replied, his face etched with worry. "But sir, the madam, she refuses to take her medicine." I blinked. A grown woman, scared of taking medicine? I walked over to the bed and tentatively called her name. "Ms. Sterling." She opened her eyes. They were hazy, lacking their usual sharpness. "Jake." Her voice was hoarse. "It's me. You have a fever. You need to take your medicine." She frowned and turned her head away. "No." Her tone was that of a stubborn 3-year-old. I was a loss. I couldn't hit her. I couldn't yell at her. The contract forbade it. That left one option, persuasion. "Why not?" "It's not that bitter," I lied. "The data is inconclusive," she mumbled. "What data?" "Aspirin. Molecular formula CNH804, molar mass 180. 16 grams per mole. Hydrolyzes in the body to salicylic acid. Half-life. Too many variables." I stared at her dumbfounded. "Lady, you have a fever. You're not conducting a chemistry experiment." Just then, the doctor arrived. After a quick examination, he confirmed it's just a fever from a common cold. She needs rest and medication. He prescribed a pharmacy's worth of pills, gave his instructions, and left. Armed with pills and a glass of water, I returned to the bedside to resume my mission. "Ms. Sterling, come on, open up." I cooed like I was feeding a toddler. She kept her eyes closed, ignoring me. Out of options, I resorted to my trump card. I pulled out my phone, opened the calculator app, and whispered in her ear, "Ms. Sterling, for every minute you remain sick, the Sterling Corporation stock price could drop by 0.001%, which translates to a loss of several $1,000,000. If you're sick for the entire day, the company could lose hundreds of millions. Are you sure you want to cause such a massive financial loss just because you won't take your medicine?" The woman in the bed's eyelashes fluttered. She slowly opened her eyes, a sliver of her usual clarity returning. She held out her hand. I quickly passed her the pills and water. She swallowed them without a word. I breathed a sigh of relief. As I suspected, to communicate with a woman like this, you have to speak her language. After taking the medicine, she drifted back into a restless sleep. I pulled up a chair and sat by her bed. It wasn't that I was deeply concerned. It was because the contract explicitly stated that if Party A experienced any health issues and Party B failed to provide adequate care, there would be financial penalties. Looking at her sleeping face, stripped of its usual aggressive edge, she was actually kind of easy on the eyes. As I was thinking, she started talking in her sleep. Data. Incorrect. Redo the proposal. The acquisition. Must go through. I shook my head. This woman was all business, even in her dreams. A true capitalist. By the afternoon, her fever had spiked, and she was delirious, muttering about takeover strategies and hedge funds. It was giving me a headache. Then, she suddenly grabbed my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. Dad, Mom, don't go. Her voice was laced with a vulnerability and desperation I had never heard before. I froze. Her file said her parents had died in a plane crash when she was very young. She was raised by her grandfather, an equally formidable old man. So, even the strongest people have a soft spot deep down. I didn't pull my hand away. I just let her hold it. After what felt like a long time, her grip loosened and her breathing evened out. I touched her forehead. The fever seemed to have broken slightly. I was about to get up to get her some water when she spoke again, her eyes still closed. Jake, yeah, your calluses. They're scratching me. I blinked. Lady, these are the proud marks of a working man who spends his days typing and occasionally moving heavy objects. What would you know? I quietly pulled my hand back. The next morning, Catherine's fever was gone. She sat up in bed, working on her laptop as if nothing had happened. It was like the fragile, childlike version of her from yesterday had been a hallucination. Thank you for yesterday, she said without looking up. Don't mention it. It's in the contract. I placed her breakfast on the nightstand. She finally looked up at me. You were here the whole time? Yep. Did I say anything strange? She asked, a hint of unease in her eyes. I pictured her calling out for her parents. But I just smiled and said, You did? You said I deserved a raise, and if you didn't give me one, you'd dock my entire bonus. She paused for a second, then realized I was joking. In your dreams, she snorted, returning to her work. But I could have sworn I saw the corner of her mouth twitch upward. That day, the atmosphere in the estate felt just a little bit different. The peace didn't last long. A few days later, I was with Catherine at a business negotiation. On the way back, our car was cornered by several black vans. A dozen masked men carrying clubs jumped out, clearly looking for trouble. The driver and our bodyguard tensed up. I was starting to panic, too. I glanced at Catherine, but she looked completely calm, almost bored. Vince Romano's old tricks, she said under her breath. Vince Romano, a rival real estate developer known for his dirty tactics. Ms. Sterling, stay in the car. We'll handle this, the bodyguard said, about to get out. Don't bother, Catherine stopped him. Let them in. The bodyguard and driver were stunned. My eyes went wide. Ms. Sterling, are you still running a fever? Let them in for what? To offer them a drink. Shut up, she shot me a glare. A moment later, our car door was yanked open. A man with a scar across his face leaned in, snarling, Ms. Sterling, our boss wants to have a word with you. Fine, Catherine nodded. Your vans are filthy. I'm not riding in them. You can drive my car. I'll give you directions. The scar-faced man and his crew were baffled. They'd never encountered a hostage this cooperative. After a moment of confused glances, two of them got into our car, forcing our driver and bodyguard into the back. Scarface himself got behind the wheel. Where to? He asked. The abandoned steel mill on the edge of town, Catherine said, giving the address as easily as if it were her own. Scarface was even more confused. That was their planned destination. How did she know? The car started, followed by their fleet of vans. I sat next to Catherine, not daring to breathe. I whispered, Ms. Sterling, what's the plan here? Are we just turning ourselves in? You wouldn't understand, she said, rolling her eyes. This is called saving time and maximizing efficiency. Wow. A capitalist time is so precious, they even streamline their own kidnapping. Soon, we arrived at the abandoned steel mill. We were led into a vast, empty warehouse where Vince Romano, a portly man built like a barrel, was sitting in a chair, waiting for us with a smug grin. Ms. Sterling, we meet again, he chuckled. Cut to the chase. What are your terms? Catherine said. Straight to the point. I like it. Romano clapped his hands. The Southside property development. You back out, and I let you walk. And if I don't. Romano sneered. Then I'm afraid things will get unpleasant for you. And this pretty boy next to you. I hear he's your little treasure. Maybe I'll have my guys chop off his fingers one by one and mail them to you. The moment he finished, the temperature in the warehouse seemed to drop by 20 degrees. I saw Catherine's eyes change. It was a look of extreme danger. Slowly, she took off her suit jacket and handed it to me. Hold this. Then, she cracked her knuckles and rolled her neck, producing a series of sharp, audible pops. Vince, she said, looking at the fat man, you made two mistakes today. First, you shouldn't have threatened my husband. Second, you shouldn't have shown your face when I just finished my boxing workout and my hands were itching for a fight. Romano was still processing. What are you talking about? Trying to scare me? You're just a woman. Before he could finish, Catherine moved. She was a blur, a flash of motion. The next thing I knew, the scar-faced goon closest to her was sent flying backward, hitting the wall with a sickening thud and slumping to the ground, unconscious. Everyone was in shock. The remaining dozen thugs snapped out of it and rushed her with their clubs raised. And then I witnessed something I will never forget. Catherine moved through them like an elegant but lethal predator. Her movements were brutally efficient. An elbow strike here, a knee jab there, a textbook throw. Every move she made, another thug went down. These men, all bigger and stronger than her, were like paper dolls in her presence. It wasn't even a fair fight. This wasn't a CEO. This was a secret agent. In less than 3 minutes, aside from the three of us, no one else in the warehouse was left standing. The thugs were all groaning on the floor. Catherine stood amidst the carnage, not even breathing heavily. She walked over to the now petrified Vince Romano. He slid off his chair and collapsed onto the floor, a dark patch spreading across the front of his pants. Ms. Sterling, please, have mercy, he stammered. Catherine looked down at him, her eyes like chips of ice. The south side property is mine, and that lot your company owns on the north side. I'm taking that, too. Have the transfer papers on my desk within 3 days. Yes, I'll do it. I'll do it right now. Romano sobbed. Catherine ignored him and walked back to me. She took her jacket, put it back on, and smoothed out the lapels, once again the picture of a sophisticated executive. It was as if the warrior goddess from a moment ago had never existed. She stopped in front of me and frowned. Why are you shaking? I'm scared, I said honestly. I was genuinely terrified. I was afraid that one day she'd get tired of me and unleash that on me. She just snorted, a barely perceptible flicker of pride in her eyes. Useless, she muttered, then walked out of the warehouse. Our driver and bodyguard, who had been standing at the entrance the entire time, looked on with a mixture of worship, awe, and practiced nonchalance. Clearly, this wasn't the first time they'd seen something like this. On the ride back, the car was completely silent. I stole a glance at Catherine. She was already back to reviewing documents on her tablet, the line of her profile perfect. Who would have thought that such a seemingly delicate frame could contain such terrifying power? What are you looking at? She asked without raising her head. And nothing. I quickly looked away. I was just thinking, Ms. Sterling, you're truly a woman of many talents. She looked up from her tablet. Next time something like this happens, just stand behind me. I blinked. Oh, okay. Was she protecting me? A strange feeling stirred in my chest. Being $100 million contract husband actually felt surprisingly safe. After the kidnapping incident, life returned to normal. Before long, Catherine was taking me to another charity gala. She warned me that these events were breeding grounds for all sorts of vipers and parasites. I wholeheartedly agreed. After the last company party, I was well aware. The gala was held in the grand ballroom of a 5-star hotel. Once again, I was her human accessory, plastered with a professional smile. This time, however, no one dared to approach me with any ill intent. Word of my status in the Sterling family had clearly made the rounds. Everyone now looked at me with a certain reverence, the man protected by the she-devil. The evening moved on to the charity auction. The auctioneer was passionately describing the various items up for bid. Famous paintings, antique vases, diamond jewelry. Catherine seemed utterly bored, only occasionally raising her paddle when prompted by her assistant. Then, the auctioneer presented a special item. Ladies and gentlemen, our next piece is a one-of-a-kind necklace, Starlight, designed by the brilliant up-and-coming designer Ms. Isabella Rossi. Ms. Rossi has pledged that all proceeds from this auction will be donated to help children in underserved communities. A woman in a long white dress with a gentle, graceful demeanor walked onto the stage. This was Isabella Rossi. According to my briefing, she was Catherine's college classmate and former best friend. They had a falling out over a man. That man, of course, was Chad Preston. Man, the drama was thick. Isabella gave a heartfelt speech about her design inspiration and her passion for charity. The audience applauded enthusiastically. I rolled my eyes. This woman's game was on a whole other level than Lily's. The bidding for the necklace started at $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. Chad Preston, sitting in the audience, raised his paddle and smugly called out $100,000. He was clearly trying to impress Isabella. After his bid, he shot a provocative glance at Catherine. Catherine didn't even acknowledge him. On stage, Isabella gave Chad a grateful smile. The price continued to climb, quickly reaching 180,000. Chad raised his paddle again. 200,000. A wave of gasps went through the crowd. 200,000 for a piece by a new designer was clearly a personal statement. 200,000, the auctioneer shouted excitedly. Do I hear any higher? Everyone assumed the necklace was Chad's. Just then, Catherine lazily lifted her paddle. She didn't even speak. Her assistant beside her announced the number. 10 million. The entire ballroom fell silent. Every eye in the room was fixed on Catherine Sterling. 10 million? For that necklace? Had she lost her mind? Chad's face turned a deep, blotchy red. He had intended to use 200,000 to win the girl's heart and humiliate Catherine. Instead, she had just buried him under an avalanche of cash. Isabella's expression on stage was a complicated mix of shock and something else. She probably thought Catherine was targeting her and didn't know whether to be pleased or furious. The auctioneer finally recovered, his voice cracking with excitement. T 10 million. Ms. Sterling bids 10 million. Do I have any other bids? He asked 3 times, but no one responded. Who in their right mind would bid against Catherine Sterling? It wasn't about money anymore. It was about self-preservation. Bang! The gavel fell. The necklace belonged to Catherine. Isabella herself brought the necklace over to our table. Catherine, thank you. I never thought you'd still be willing to support me, she said, her voice thick with fake emotion, tears welling in her eyes. Catherine took the necklace box, didn't even glance inside, and tossed it to me. Here, go to the back and pay for it. Then, she finally looked at Isabella and said coolly, You're mistaken. I'm not supporting you. I'm supporting the children. She paused, a scornful smile playing on her lips. After all, when something has been contaminated by certain people, it's good to know it can still be used for something worthwhile. The color drained from Isabella's face. Catherine's message was clear. The necklace was tainted by its association with her, and its only value now was as a charitable donation. It was a verbal execution. I went backstage to settle the payment. When I returned, Chad was harassing Catherine. Catherine, why do you always have to fight me? You're still not over me, are you? I almost laughed out loud. What kind of twisted logic did this guy operate on? Catherine looked at him like he was a piece of gum on her shoe. Chad, do you honestly believe every woman on the planet should be orbiting you? Just then, she noticed the necklace in my hand. She took it from me. Then, she did something that made every jaw in the room drop. With her own hands, she fastened the $10 million necklace around my neck. It was a woman's necklace, a bit too short for me, and it looked ridiculous, like a diamond-studded choker. The scene was absurd. Do you see this? Catherine grabbed my chin and turned my head to face Chad. I, Catherine Sterling, would rather throw my money into a fire or buy a leash for my husband than spend a single penny on someone like you. My professional smile almost cracked. Lady, humiliate him all you want, but can you please leave me out of it? I felt like a prize poodle that had just one best in show. Chad was shaking with rage, pointing at me. You, for a man like this. Catherine ignored him and pulled me away. Let's go. The air in here is toxic. She left behind a room full of stunned, silent guests. The first thing I did when we got in the car was rip the choker off my neck. Ms. Sterling, next time you plan something like that, could you give me a heads up? I do have some dignity, you know. Is your dignity worth $100 million? She shot back. I shut my mouth. Okay, fair point. It wasn't. She looked at the necklace in my hand and said unexpectedly, You can keep it. I was stunned. A $10 million necklace? You're giving it to me. What else am I supposed to do with it? Keep it as an irritating reminder. She leaned back against the seat, closed her eyes, and looked tired. Jake. Yeah. Do you think I'm being childish? I looked at her, and for the first time, I sensed a hint of loneliness. I thought for a moment, no, I think you're great just the way you are. You're rich, you're powerful, and when you don't like someone, you deal with them directly. That's a lot better than all the people who spend their lives backstabbing and playing political games. I'm in it. She opened her eyes and just looked at me for a long time. Then she said softly, Thank you. The atmosphere in the car became strange again. I looked down at the necklace in my hand, wondering if I should pawn it tomorrow or put it in a safe. A serious dilemma. Recently, the company was working on a major overseas partnership, and Catherine was buried in work. The representative from the other company was a Frenchman named Pierre, who was notoriously difficult. The negotiation was set to take place in the presidential suite of a luxury hotel downtown. Catherine, a few top executives, and I spent the entire day haggling with him. By evening, the talks had stalled. Pierre suggested they call it a day and resume in the morning. The other executives left, but Catherine stayed. You're staying here, she said to me. Huh? Why me? I don't speak French, and I can't read any of those documents. You're staying to be my human stress pillow, she said, rubbing her temples, looking exhausted. I'm tired. I'm going to rest here for a bit. Having you around helps me relax. I blinked. Since when was that part of my job description? But then again, the contract did state I had to fulfill all of Party A's reasonable requests. Being a pillow was reasonable, right? The presidential suite was enormous, with a separate conference room and bedroom. Catherine went into the bedroom, leaving me to lounge in the living area, bored out of my mind. I turned on the TV and eventually fell asleep on the couch. I don't know how long I was out, but I was jolted awake by a series of sharp knocks on the door. I groggily went to open it. Standing outside were 7 or 8 police officers with grim expressions. The one in the lead flashed his badge. NYPD. Routine inspection. We received a tip about illegal activities happening at this address. I was instantly wide awake. Illegal activities? I looked down at myself. I was wearing a suit. Nothing suspicious there. Then I thought about Catherine in the bedroom. Oh crap, this can't be happening. Officers, this is a mistake, a huge mistake. I tried to explain. We'll see about that, one of them said, pushing past me and rushing into the suite. They made a beeline for the bedroom. My heart sank. If this got out, the Sterling Corporation's reputation would be ruined, and my $100 million would go up in smoke. The bedroom door was thrown open. A few officers stormed in, and then they all froze. I peeked over their shoulders to see what was going on. The bedroom was brightly lit. Catherine wasn't sleeping at all. She was fully dressed in her suit, standing in front of a giant whiteboard covered in complex formulas and data charts. She was holding a marker, furiously scribbling calculations. Several laptops were open around her, their screens filled with intricate stock charts and lines of code. The scene looked less like a hotel room and more like a Wall Street trading floor or a high-tech military command center. Catherine turned at the noise. Seeing the group of police officers, she frowned, her face a mask of annoyance at being interrupted. Who are you? What is this about? Her tone was that of a CEO questioning an underling who had barged into her office. The lead officer was stunned. He looked at the tip sheet in his hand, then at the scene before him, looking like his entire worldview had just been shattered. We received a report of illegal prostitution taking place here, he stammered. Catherine's frown deepened. She pushed up the non-prescription glasses she wore for reading documents, her eyes becoming sharp. Prostitution, she scoffed. Do I look like the kind of person who needs to pay for company? The officers glanced at each other. No, she didn't. She looked like the kind of person who was about to acquire the entire police department. Furthermore, Catherine pointed to the formulas on the whiteboard. This is my company's latest quantum hedging model, involving the movement of several $billion. Your interruption has just broken my concentration. If there is even the slightest error in this model as a result, the financial loss will be at least $1 billion, minimum. She looked the lead officer straight in the eye and said, enunciating every word, which one of you is prepared to take responsibility for that? Sweat started pouring down the officers' faces. They were just following up on a tip. How did they get entangled in a multi-billion-dollar corporate project? Just then, the hotel manager came running in, out of breath. Ms. Sterling. Officers. This is all a terrible misunderstanding. Ms. Sterling is our most valued guest. The lead officer wiped his brow and quickly forced a smile. Ms. Sterling, our deepest apologies. We've made a mistake. This must have been a malicious false report. Catherine just snorted. The officer hastily gathered his men, and they practically ran out of the suite. I stood by the door, trying my hardest not to double over with laughter. This was, without a doubt, the most incredible vice bust I had ever witnessed. After the police left, Catherine tossed her marker onto a table and sat down on the sofa, massaging her temples. This has Vince Romano or Chad Preston written all over it. So what now? I asked. Nothing, she said, closing her eyes. The model is complete. I'm going to bed. She seemed completely unfazed. Her mental fortitude was astounding. She stood up to go back to the bedroom, then stopped and looked back at me. You, she pointed to the living room sofa, are sleeping here tonight. In case they try something else, you're the first line of defense. I sighed. So now I wasn't just a stress pillow, I was also a human shield. I resigned myself to my fate and lay down on the couch. A moment later, her voice came from the bedroom. Jake, yeah, find out who made that call tomorrow. Once you do, buy out his company and fire him. You got it, Ms. Sterling. I smiled in the darkness. Being an employee of a woman like this was a roller coaster. I often felt like my life was in danger, but watching her dismantle her enemies was incredibly satisfying. Catherine's parents had passed away when she was young, but her grandfather was still around. He was, by all accounts, even more domineering and formidable than she was. He had been living abroad for health reasons, but had recently returned. And he had specifically requested to meet me, his new grandson-in-law. I was nervous. I asked Catherine, what if he doesn't like me and tries to give me a $5 million check to leave you? She rolled her eyes. My grandfather doesn't write checks for less than $1 billion. I immediately sat up straighter. In that case, I will be on my best behavior and do everything in my power to be humiliated by that check. The meeting was at the old Sterling family residence, a stately, old-money brownstone. Her grandfather, Julian Sterling, sat in a high-backed armchair, dressed in a sharp suit, radiating an aura of quiet authority. His hawk-like eyes scanned me up and down. I felt like I was being put through an x-ray machine. "So, you're Jake," he said, his voice deep and resonant. "Hello, grandfather," I replied dutifully. "Oomph." He nodded, his expression unreadable. "What does your family do?" "My parents passed away a long time ago. I don't have any other family." "Oh." Julian's eyebrow raised, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. "And what do you do for a living?" "I'm currently unemployed. My main responsibility is taking care of Catherine's daily needs," I said without batting an eye. At that, a few of the other relatives in the room sneered. In other words, I was a kept man. But Julian Sterling laughed. "Excellent. Absolutely excellent." He slapped his knee. "A husband to the Sterling family has no need to work. Being able to take care of that girl is a greater accomplishment than running any company." Me? The relatives? This wasn't how the script was supposed to go. Wasn't he supposed to fly into a rage and throw me out? That girl, Catherine, she's been stubborn and ill-tempered since she was a child. The fact that you can put up with her proves you're a man of great character and patience. Julian seemed more and more pleased with me. Wonderful, wonderful. I approve of this grandson-in-law. I was completely lost. This old man's logic was on another plane of existence. The rest of the visit was even stranger. He took my hand and started asking me personal questions. "Jake, my boy, you and Catherine have been married for a while now. When are you planning on having children?" I almost choked. Children? Me and Catherine? We were as intimate as two cucumbers in the same salad bowl. I shot a desperate look at Catherine. She looked just as exasperated as I felt. "Grandfather, we're still young." "We're not in a rush," she interjected. "Not in a rush." Julian's eyes widened. "You may not be, but I am. I'm waiting to hold my great-grandchild." He turned back to me. "Jake, don't you be afraid of her. When it comes to making babies, you need to be proactive. If she gives you any trouble, you tell me. Grandfather will back you up." I felt tears welling up in my eyes. Be proactive? I was afraid if I got proactive, I'd be reporting to the orthopedic wing of the nearest hospital the next day. The rest of the dinner was spent under a barrage of the old man's enthusiastic baby-making encouragement. After dinner, he mysteriously summoned me to his study. He opened a safe, pulled out a small porcelain vial, and pressed it into my hand. "Jake, my boy, this is a little something I've been saving for years. Every night, you secretly put a little of this in Catherine's soup. I guarantee that within 3 months, there will be a new heir to the Sterling family." I opened the vial and sniffed. A strong, earthy, herbal scent filled my nostrils. I looked at the secret potion in my hand, then at the old man's expectant face. This didn't feel like medicine. It felt like a bomb. If Catherine found out about this, she would dismantle me piece by piece. On the way home, I gave the vial to Catherine. She took it, a strange expression on her face. "What's this?" "Your grandfather gave it to me. He said it would help us have a child sooner," I said cautiously. Catherine uncorked it, sniffed, then took out her phone, snapped a picture, and sent it to someone. A few moments later, her phone rang. She answered, said a few words, and hung up. She looked at me, a half-smile playing on her lips. "Do you know what's in here?" I shook my head. "It's a special blend from one of my grandfather's traditional medicine specialists. The main ingredients are goji berries, ginseng, deer antler." Sounded normal so far. "And," she paused, "a variety of herbs specifically used to prepare prize-winning stallions for breeding season." I sputtered. I almost swerved off the road. What in the world did her grandfather think I was? "So, what about the medicine?" "You should keep it," Catherine said, tossing the vial back to me. "You never know when you might need it." I stared at the vial in my hand, which now felt radioactive. I hoped to God I would never, ever find out if this stuff actually worked. The great baby-making crisis was averted for now, but trouble, as always, was just around the corner. This time, it came in the form of another of Catherine's childhood friends, a woman named Angela. If the intern, Lily, was a bronze-level schemer and the designer, Isabella, was silver, then Angela was, without a doubt, a grandmaster-level manipulator. She didn't target me directly like the others. On the contrary, she was incredibly nice to me. "Jake, You have to try these pastries I bake myself. Jake, I brought you back this shirt from Italy. See if it fits. Jake, you know how Catherine is. Don't take her temper personally. You just have to be the patient one. She showered me with warmth and affection, acting more caring than my own mother. But she only ever did it when Catherine was present. The look she gave me was full of pity and understanding, as if I were a poor, tortured soul living under the thumb of a tyrant, and she was the angel sent to rescue me. I saw right through it. This woman was using a classic pincer move, flattery and subversion. By being overly nice to me, she wanted to make Catherine see me as one of them, weak and easily manipulated, thereby driving a wedge between us. Every time Catherine saw Angela fawning over me, she just watched coldly, saying nothing. I had no idea what she was thinking. One day, Angela invited us to go golfing. As someone who had never even held a golf club, I was, predictably, a disaster. Angela was right there beside me, being incredibly patient, physically guiding my stance and grip. Jake, you have to relax your body. Yes, like that. And hold the club like this. She cooed, her body pressing against mine in a way that was far too familiar. Catherine was standing a short distance away, her expression hidden behind a pair of large sunglasses. I could feel sweat trickling down my back. This woman was playing with fire. After golf, Angela suggested we go for afternoon tea. In the tea room, she sighed dramatically and said to Catherine, "You know, Kate, I really envy you." Catherine raised an eyebrow. "Envy me for what?" "I envy you for having the courage to chase your own happiness," Angela said, her gaze drifting to me with a soft, gentle expression. Jake may have come from a humble background, but he's such a good person, so kind, so gentle, so considerate. Not like the men in our circle, who are all so calculating. Finding someone who genuinely cares for you is more important than anything else. Her words sounded like a compliment, but every sentence was a poisoned dart aimed at Catherine. The subtext was clear. This is the best someone like you can do, Catherine. And you, Jake, are nothing but a spineless kept man. I set down my teacup and smiled. Angela, I think you might have a misunderstanding about me. Angela looked taken aback. Jake, what do you mean? What I mean is, I looked at her, my smile never wavering. All those things you just mentioned, kindness, gentleness, consideration, those aren't my strengths. I'm not a particularly skilled man. My only real virtue is that I know my place. I turned to Catherine, my eyes full of sincerity. I'm fully aware that I owe my current lifestyle entirely to my wife. She gave me everything. For that reason, I will only ever listen to her, and I will only ever be good to her. I paused, then turned my gaze back to Angela, my smile turning icy. As for everyone else, whether they're nice to me or not, it makes no difference, because none of them can influence the $100 million paycheck my wife gives me. Angela's face froze. She never expected me to be so blunt, so shameless. My little speech had completely dismantled her entire strategy. All her talk of kindness and finding a kindred spirit was meaningless in the face of a 9-figure sum. Jake Evans, was a man who was purely and unapologetically motivated by money. Catherine had been silent the whole time, but I saw her hand, the one holding her teacup, pause for a fraction of a second. Angela's expression shifted through several shades of outrage before she finally managed to force a smile. Jake, you're so funny. I'm not joking, I said, my smile vanishing. Angela, my wife is not a patient person. She doesn't have a great temper, and when she doesn't like something, her first instinct is to throw it away. So, I'd advise you to keep your distance from us from now on, because I'm afraid that one day she might get annoyed and decide to throw you out a window. It was a blatant threat. The color drained from Angela's face. The act was over. She shot up from her chair, gave me a look of pure hatred, and stormed out. The tea room was silent, leaving just me and Catherine. The atmosphere was a little awkward. I cleared my throat. So, Ms. Sterling, how was my performance? Catherine put down her teacup and looked at me, her expression unreadable. She studied me for a long time before she finally spoke. Jake, yes. Were you being sincere just now? I was taken aback. Sincere? Well, I was being mostly sincere. I was definitely in it for the money. But after all this time, it would be a lie to say there weren't other feelings involved. At the very least, watching her protect me was always incredibly cool. I looked at her and suddenly grinned. Of course I was sincere, I said. You're my boss. I've always got your back. She seemed a little disappointed, but also a little relieved. She didn't say anything else. She just picked up the teapot and poured me a fresh cup. Drink up, she said. The tea today is quite good. I looked at the clear liquid in my cup and felt like that contract between us had just been amended with something new. After I put her in her place, Angela disappeared for a while. I thought that was the end of it, but I was being naive. A grandmaster-level manipulator doesn't give up that easily. She started spreading rumors. She painted me as a master con artist who had tricked Catherine Sterling and was secretly siphoning assets from her company. She claimed I was having affairs with several female executives. The rumors were viciously detailed, complete with poorly photoshopped pictures of me with other women. Soon, the entire business world was talking. The Sterling Corporation stock took a small but noticeable hit. A few of the board members got nervous and started pressuring Catherine to get rid of me, her liability. One day, Catherine summoned me to her study. Her expression was more serious than I had ever seen it. "Do you have anything to say?" she asked, sliding a file across the desk to me. It was a full report on the rumors, including the doctor photos. "Do you have anything to say?" she asked, sliding a file across the desk to me. It was a full report on the rumors, including the doctor photos. I picked it up, glanced through it, and laughed. The Photoshop skills here are worse than the fake IDs I made for my friends in college. The Photoshop skills here are worse than the fake IDs I made for my friends in college. Catherine stared at me. "So these are all fake?" "Of course they are," I said, shrugging. "Ms. Sterling, do you really think I'd have the guts to pull something behind your back? I happen to enjoy living." She fell silent. The atmosphere in the room was heavy. "Jake," she said suddenly, "our contract ends in 1 month." "Jake," she said suddenly, "our contract ends in 1 month." My stomach tightened. "I know. When it's over, I'll give you another 100 million. You can go somewhere no one knows you and start a new life." She said it without looking at me. "When it's over, I'll give you another 100 million. You can go somewhere no one knows you and start a new life." She said it without looking at me. I was stunned. "Why?" "Angela is targeting me. You were dragged into this, and that's my fault. I can't let you get hurt because of me anymore." "Angela is targeting me. You were dragged into this, and that's my fault. I can't let you get hurt because of me anymore." I looked at her and couldn't help but find the situation darkly funny. "Ms. Sterling, are you confused about something?" I asked. "I was never a victim here. From the moment I signed that contract, I became your problem. Your enemies are my enemies." "Ms. Sterling, are you confused about something?" I asked. "I was never a victim here. From the moment I signed that contract, I became your problem. Your enemies are my enemies. I took your money, so I do the work. It's professional ethics. I took your money, so I do the work. It's professional ethics." I tossed the file into the trash can. "Angela's whole game is to destabilize you and get you kicked off the board, isn't it? You can't tell me you didn't see through this pathetic little scheme. Angela's whole game is to destabilize you and get you kicked off the board, isn't it? You can't tell me you didn't see through this pathetic little scheme." Catherine looked up, her eyes wide with surprise. She probably never expected her useless husband to say something like that. Catherine looked up, her eyes wide with surprise. She probably never expected her useless husband to say something like that. "Enemies are my enemies." "Ms. Sterling, are you confused about something?" I asked. "I was never a victim here. From the moment I signed that contract, I became your problem. Your enemies are my enemies. I took your money, so I do the work. It's professional ethics. I took your money, so I do the work. It's professional ethics." I tossed the file into the trash can. "Angela's whole game is to destabilize you and get you kicked off the board, isn't it? You can't tell me you didn't see through this pathetic little scheme. Angela's whole game is to destabilize you and get you kicked off the board, isn't it? You can't tell me you didn't see through this pathetic little scheme." Catherine looked up, her eyes wide with surprise. She probably never expected her useless husband to say something like that. Catherine looked up, her eyes wide with surprise. She probably never expected her useless husband to say something like that. "So what's your plan?" she asked. "So what's your plan?" she asked. "Simple," I grinned. "We play along, and we spring the trap." "Simple," I grinned. "We play along, and we spring the trap." A few days later, the Sterling Corporation held an emergency board meeting. The official topic was how to handle the corporate crisis caused by my scandal. Angela's father, a board member, was in attendance. He and a few allies were vehemently demanding that Catherine fire me and even temporarily step down as CEO to quell the media storm. Just as they were reaching a fever pitch, the boardroom doors opened. I walked in. Everyone stared at me like I was a cockroach at a dinner party. "Jake, we'll let you in here," Angela's father demanded. "Jake, we'll let you in here," Angela's father demanded. I ignored him and walked straight to Catherine's side. "Ladies and gentlemen of the board," I said, my voice clear and steady, "I know there's been a lot of talk about my wife and me lately. Today, I'd like to set the record straight." "Ladies and gentlemen of the board," I said, my voice clear and steady, "I know there's been a lot of talk about my wife and me lately. Today, I'd like to set the record straight." I clapped my hands. A team of lawyers filed into the room. "I admit," I began, "that some of the rumors spread by Miss Angela are true. I admit, I began, that some of the rumors spread by Miss Angela are true. The room erupted. Even Catherine frowned. A triumphant smirk spread across her uncle's face. That is, I continued, turning to look directly at Angela's father. I have been transferring assets from the Sterling Corporation. That is, I continued, turning to look directly at Angela's father. I have been transferring assets from the Sterling Corporation. However, I haven't been transferring them to my own accounts. I've been transferring them to. I snapped my fingers. The projector screen behind me lit up. Displayed on it were dozens of acquisition agreements to buy out every shell corporation and competing company secretly owned by Miss Angela and several other board members present in this room. On the screen, one familiar company name after another appeared, each stamped with a bright red acquired seal. On the screen, one familiar company name after another appeared, each stamped with a bright red acquired seal. Angela's father's face went chalk white. The other board members, allied with him, shot up from their chairs in terror. They never imagined that their secret dealings had been uncovered, and I had been the perfect frontman to carry out the counterattack. Catherine had sensed their plot from the beginning. She played along, letting me take the heat from the rumors while I was secretly dismantling their entire network from the inside out. Well, gentlemen, Catherine said, rising to her feet and looking down at them with icy contempt. Do any of you have anything else you'd like to say? Angela's father collapsed into his chair, utterly defeated. He had lost everything. He thought he was the hunter, but from the very beginning, he had been the prey, and I had been the perfect bait. Their conspiracy was crushed. Not only did they fail to unseat Catherine, but they also lost their entire business empire overnight. The crisis at the Sterling Corporation was over, and my name was cleared. I had gone from a kept man to the strategic mastermind behind the CEO. My legend had a new chapter, and just like that, everything settled down. Our contract had finally reached its last day. The atmosphere in the estate was strange. Catherine and I sat at the dining table, eating breakfast in complete silence. A year had gone by so fast. I had gone from a broke guy eating $25 burgers to a man with a 9-figure bank account. I had survived a kidnapping, sat through a dinner with vipers, verbally annihilated social climbers, and helped my boss execute a brilliant corporate takedown. The experience was more intense than the last 2 decades of my life combined. Your card is ready. There are $200 million in the account, Catherine said, breaking the silence. Your card is ready. There are $200 million in the account, Catherine said, breaking the silence. I thought the deal was $100 million. The other 100 is a bonus, she said flatly. You did well. The other 100 is a bonus, she said flatly. You did well. I looked at her, a swirl of complicated feelings in my chest. So, I guess I'll move out today. She paused, the knife in her hand hovering over her plate. If you wish. I finished the last bite of my toast and stood up. Well, Ms. Sterling, I'll go upstairs and pack. She didn't look up, just grunted in acknowledgement. I went back to my room, but there was hardly anything to pack. I had arrived with nothing. I was leaving with nothing but a bank card. I came downstairs with a single small suitcase. Catherine was still sitting at the table, her breakfast untouched. I walked over to her. Ms. Sterling, I'm leaving. She finally looked up at me. Her eyes were as calm as ever, but I thought I saw something new in them. What are your plans? She asked. Haven't decided yet, I smiled. Maybe I'll travel the world for a while. See what it looks like with your money. She nodded. That's a good idea. We fell silent again. I felt like I should go. Sticking around any longer would just make things more awkward. That's a good idea. We fell silent again. I felt like I should go. Sticking around any longer would just make things more awkward. Well, goodbye then, I said. She didn't answer. I turned and walked toward the grand front door. 1 step, 2 steps, 3. My heart felt strangely heavy. Well, goodbye then, I said. Just as my hand reached for the doorknob, I heard her voice from behind me. Jake! I stopped and turned back. She was on her feet, standing by the table. I have another job opening here, she said. What kind of job? She looked at me and said, enunciating each word carefully, the Sterling Corporation's permanent, in-house, human annoyance purifier. The Sterling Corporation's permanent, in-house, human annoyance purifier. She paused, then added, the salary is $100 million a year, with no cap. She paused, then added, the salary is $100 million a year, with no cap. I stared at her, stunned. Was she asking me to stay? I stared at her, stunned. Was she asking me to stay? This position has no contract, no term limit, she continued, her gaze serious. You can have it for as long as you want. This position has no contract, no term limit, she continued, her gaze serious. You can have it for as long as you want. I looked at her, this woman who had completely changed my life. She was still a queen on her throne, but right now, her eyes held a hint of hope. A slow grin spread across my face. I dropped my suitcase and walked back toward her. I stopped right in front of her and, mimicking her signature move, raised an eyebrow. Ms. Sterling, is this a job offer or a marriage proposal? Ms. Sterling, is this a job offer or a marriage proposal? Her face turned a shade of red I had never seen before. It was the first time I'd ever seen her blush. Don't be ridiculous, she stammered. I just think you've proven to be a useful asset. Don't be ridiculous, she stammered. I just think you've proven to be a useful asset. Seeing her so flustered for once, I couldn't help but laugh. All right, I said, clear my throat. Since you're being so sincere, I suppose I can condescend to accept this new position. All right, I said, clear my throat. Since you're being so sincere, I suppose I can condescend to accept this new position. I held out my hand to her. In that case, my new boss. It's a pleasure to be working with you. In that case, my new boss. It's a pleasure to be working with you. She looked at my outstretched hand, hesitated for a moment, and then placed her own in mine. Her hand was still cool to the touch, but this time it felt warm. Sunlight streamed through the windows, bathing us in a golden glow. I knew that one contract had ended, but for her and me, a new story was just beginning.